Okay, welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that I just stamped out based on a composition that I did for the first time at a convention a couple weeks ago in Mesa, Arizona. I liked it a lot and I wanted to do a video based on that composition. I really like the warm tones of this and kind of the overall feel of it. Out there in Arizona, it's the first time I think I used that Lady on the Horse stamp too, so I really like how that figure kind of interacts with you know, whatever's going on in the background. I like, you know, having kind of figures looking out into the scene that we've created, kind of along with us as a viewer. So one of the things that I talk about in this video is I've stamped out these islands in here, and for me, I think the real key as far as kind of a cohesion as well as kind of establishing a lighting scheme is after I've stamped out these islands in here, you can see kind of the darker tones at the base of them, really setting these figures, these shapes into the scene as opposed to them kind of looking like they're kind of floating on the surface. So stamped them out in darker tones in here. You'll see how I did that if you watch the video. But anyways, if you choose to watch it, I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, drop us a note in the comment section. And if you have any questions as far as some of the inks that I've used in this or the designs that I've used, just click on the Show More button underneath this video if you're watching it on YouTube. So, hope you enjoy. Kind of a fun, relatively quick scene if you do it in kind of the fashion that I do it with the color first and just kind of laying down some different silhouettes here. Okay, this is a scene that, or a composition and color scheme that I came up with in Arizona a couple weeks ago at a stamp convention, and I really liked it, and I thought it would be one that I would like to do in video format. It's going to be a warm colored scheme, and it'll be kind of either a dusk or dawn type of situation, or maybe more sunset, you know, so dusk. But I'm pulling out some colors that I think would go well in this color scheme. I have an Adirondack, I have some Distress inks, Memento, and some Marvy, okay? I'm just making a point here that as long as it's this, you know, the type of ink that we're going for, at least in terms of this technique here of dye-based inks on glossy cardstock, it really doesn't matter what brand you're going with. As long as it's that type, don't mix in like a pigment or an oxide or something like that, or a you know, more of a permanent ink or something of that sort, like a StazOn. Dye-based inks here, okay? All right. So I'm generally going to start working from light to dark, and then in doing so, I won't have to change out my applicator here during the process. I am using a Colorbox Stylus Tool here. But if you have something else, makeup sponges or something of that sort, you can use those. I just did a video recently where I used one of those, and it works pretty good. You know, it works just fine. I would certainly be able to do this scene with that. These are a little bit more ergonomic in terms of how they fit in your hand, but if you don't have this, just make do. You can do it, you know, use whatever it takes to apply your inks, okay? In the worst case scenario, which is something we used to do anyway, you can wad up a paper towel and kind of apply your inks in, you know, with a, you know, kind of a makeshift applicator such as that. Okay, now I'm getting a pretty good saturation here. Okay, and I'm not just applying the inks, I'm kind of building up my inks a little bit. It's not just coloring in many ways, it's kind of saturating the pulp of the paper so that the paper becomes a little bit moist, and when I move into my kind of darker colors, it won't absorb into the paper because the paper is a little bit saturated. Okay, now I am leaving some of that lightness right there, and that will kind of represent the you know, the the light's reflection off of the water, kind of in the end result. Okay. Alright. So again, this is Adirondacks Butterscotch. It has been discontinued, but it's kind of a, I don't know, kind of an earthy, ochreish, kind of yellow, I guess you can say. Alright. Let's move into, how about some Walnut Stain here, Distress Ink. We'll move into a little bit more of a brown, or I tell you what, before I move into that one, let's move into a couple kind of lighter shades of Marvy. You know, maybe like this yellow right here. It's more like a canary neutral yellow. Okay. Now that first color took a little bit longer, you know, because I'm going for both the coverage and saturation. Okay, now when you move into your next colors, be sure that you retain that light there. This is where a lot of people kind of, you know, lose their lighting, is when they move into their darker colors. Okay, they get real comfortable with the application method, and sometimes they lose all their lighting because they go too far in there. So kind of just stay on the outside edge like this, and this will be nice and easy for you. Okay, let's try this walnut. Well, okay, I don't know if I'm going to go through all of these colors. It's going to be, I'm sure some of them are going to be fairly redundant. Okay, I'll probably start applying some of them, and you won't be able to see any difference at all. And when that's the case, you know, just move on to a darker color. Okay, that was brilliant yellow right here. It's a little bit more of an orangish yellow, golden yellow maybe. Okay, let's see, here's an ochre. The pad material on this pad is really starting to collapse. It's a little bit indented here, but it's still good for ink applications. I wouldn't, you know, stamp something out using this pad anymore. But the pad is probably 20 years old, so kind of to be expected. Alright, good enough. Alright, let's move on over to that Walnut Stain. I don't think the tea dye is going to show up at all. It's just too light of a value. Okay, so the tea dye is out. The Walnut Stain is in right now. It's kind of giving more of a smoky, kind of earthy feel to that. You can see the difference between this side and this side. Well, maybe on camera you can't, but see how dark that is? And I'll just kind of spread that out a little bit like so. Kind of mellows out my... You add the browns into certain things, even greens, it kind of gives more... Oh, I don't know, maybe kind of a natural look, more mellow look to the overall color scheme, lighting scheme of a given area. Okay, that's enough for the Walnut Stain. Let's warm it up a little bit more. Let's move into... I tell you what, a lot of people don't have Marvy pads, so why don't I use the Potter's Clay Memento? I don't have a lot of Mementos, I don't have a ton of Distress Inks, but, you know, between the pads, all these different brands that I do have, I can mix and match and pretty much achieve just about any hue that I'm going after. But, I mean, I still do like getting more and more pads, even though there is some redundancies, but I don't know which one of us stampers and crafters don't like new pads. Alright, so that's Potter's Clay. You can see what kind of going with multiple layers of this does. I can use some pretty heavy technique right there, touch, and it'll just really blend out. You can do this on matte paper too. I would recommend a coated paper though, if you are doing this type of build-up. Coated papers will hold your ink on the surface a little bit better, and paper itself is a little bit less absorbent. Okay, so cardstock is not the same as photo paper. Photo paper is kind of an emulsion-based type of paper, and it is very, very fast drying when you apply media on top of it. Not to say that you can't do it, but it's going to have a very, very different feel. It dries very quickly. Now this, I mean, it's not all soaked to the touch or something like that, but I am starting to build up a lot of moisture in the pulp of the paper again, okay? Okay, potter's clay. Hardly ever use that one. I don't think to use it a lot of times. Oh, let's try this fired brick one. It's red. Let's take a look at that. Ooh, that one's really noticeable, so kind of be careful about, you know, retaining your light areas, so I'm going to stay a little bit more perimeter oriented, okay? Very light touch here when applying your colors, okay? I'm not going real heavy-handed trying to expedite the process. I'm just going over it with a very light touch, but if I want it darker, then I'll just go over it several times. You don't have to go over it, you know, 20 times or anything like that. Just a few strokes will do it. And when you kind of spread out your application process over more of the type of motion with this, with these strokes here, the more control you have over it, so it's not something like a, you know, like brush calligraphy or something like that, where you do it one time and you have it, you know. This is just a slow build-up, and it's very easy to control that way. You don't get those unexpected marks. You'll get the unexpected marks if you do kind of do like that type of thing, which some people end up doing. They start doing like this, and they use a very heavy hand just to, I don't know, think they're going faster, but then they get that type of mark on their paper, and then they spend so much more time trying to blend it in, and then they get frustrated. But just stay in one area like this, and it'll be nice and easy. And use a lot of ink, and especially in those first couple colors, and everything will go on much more smoothly. Okay, here's a rich cocoa. Looks like a darker brown. I don't use this one too much either. I usually use my Marvy ones a little bit more. But let's just use this one. It looks pretty good. It's kind of a nice, like I said, it's kind of more of that smokier, hazy, kind of maybe more of a natural hue. When you add that in there, it's a little bit more mellow, but you still get that nice, deep, rich glow, but without the kind of the hotness of that, you know, these very bright, layered inks. A little bit of darker around the perimeter makes the lighter areas seem that much lighter by contrast. Okay. Alright, now I will be adding some more tones to these, but I'm going to be stamping my imagery after I get this kind of foundation established. Which isn't to say that you can't, you know, stamp your images first and then just color in. Okay, now this is a Marvy brown. The Marvy's inks are a little bit more thin in viscosity, okay? So they penetrate the paper a little bit easier than the thicker styles of inks of, say, Memento or the Distress inks and the Ranger line of inks. Those ones are thicker, so sometimes when you're trying to build up additional tones, when you know, by the time you get to the, you know, this type of layering right here, sometimes it doesn't apply as fast because everything is just so wet, so it's not absorbing and transferring onto the paper, you know, from your applicator. So if it does that, you know, you can let it dry a little bit, or you can kind of dab around like this, you know, a little bit more, instead of kind of wiping it like this. Sometimes you wipe like that and you're wiping off color, you know, more than applying it. So I kind of use both. I use a kind of a tapping motion to build up, and I also use that wipe to kind of blend in. Alright, so you see that right there. Does it look like a sun or something like that? And, you know, the kind of specular light, you know, shining off the water's surface. It's that specular light is kind of, you know, a reflection of the light. Okay, so get that nice foundation going, and let's add in some islands, okay? Now I'm going to have this lady writer in here somewhere, and I'll have her on top of this ridge. This is going to be backwards, so it'll be like this. So, that being said, I don't want an island right behind her because it'll kind of obscure her nice silhouette. Alright? So probably something up here, or I can put her over here in the corner, like this on the left-hand side. I like things looking into the scene more than kind of over here. It'd be kind of awkward. So, you know, just, if I have an island right here, I'll stop it right here. Okay? And I like to kind of oscillate it, you know, going up the side. Alright, now, these are some different islands. They're in different sizes. I mean, I could have, you know, smaller islands like that, and it would represent something probably farther away in terms of distance, but I'll use scale here. Alright, so it'll be something like this, and maybe I'll have the first kind of neighboring island right around here. Alright, so I'm only going to use about half of this. Here's my acrylic block with some tack and peel on it. Tack and peel provides a nice temporary mounting system for your unmounted stamps. We have a video of that online as well. There's a lot of people that use tack and peel, but it's a tack, T-A-C-K, apostrophe N, peel. Alright, so this will go, I don't know, there's no set place that you have to put this, but I'll put it right around here. Okay. I'm holding this down a little bit longer because the perimeter of this paper, in terms of the pulp, is a little bit saturated, so I want that ink to transfer over the paper, because if I stamp wet into wet sometimes and I just pull it off too early, it kind of creates a vacuum, you know, where none of the ink really transferred over. It's just kind of sitting there, and it kind of sucks right off of there. Alright, so there's one island right there. I could use the other side of this one for another island, but let's use scale a little bit in terms of sizing, okay? Maybe have something smaller in the background. How about this one here? I'll put it roughly about like so, maybe. This is just a Marvy black. Marvy blacks provide a pretty decent value of black in terms of the darkness of it. Relative darkness. Alright, so go like this here. And I was mentioning I'll be going back into these scenes with some additional color now that I know where these islands are. I want to put some shadows down at the base of them so that they're like sitting in the scene as opposed to kind of floating out there like now. There's another island right here. Let's go with a little bit smaller one. Let's really push scale, okay? So we'll just go with this really small one. Probably should use my smaller block. It's a little bit overkill here, but that's alright. Okay, let's see, how about over this way? Something like that. They really need some shadows at the base of them. They're kind of like floating right now. Doesn't look like they're kind of in the water. But that's what shadows are good for. Okay. There's little 4 islands in the background. Let's stamp our foreground one with this. I need to wash off my tack and peel. It's kind of getting less tacky. It's still sticking just fine, but it's kind of got a buildup of dust. So you just kind of rinse it off in the sink and it works good as new. And then we have a video on that too. You just kind of rinse it off under kind of some running water. And it's practically like brand new. Okay, let's see here. Let me move this over a touch. Go like that, okay. There's my foreground. Always keep this little kind of protective sheet that comes with the tack and peel, so you can cover it up. Otherwise it's really sticky, especially if you just wash it up. I'll tell you what, for this little figurine right here, I'm going to stamp her later, okay? I'm going to blend in some additional tones in here, and I just want to make sure that I don't get a situation where she blurs, you know, if I go across her. Okay, so let's look at some of these tones that we've already used. Okay, let's go back to this potter's clay here. Let me just kind of stamp this out a little bit, or a lot. There's a lot of that brown ink in this tip here still. I could switch tips, but I don't know, maybe I will. Okay. Let's go to the potter's wheel. You have to kind of decide what color is going to stand out still, you know, against this background. Like this, it might be a little bit too light. I can go probably, I'll move through some darker colors here, but I'll just start off with this one. I like to build up my colors, you know, starting with lighter ones and then working incrementally darker. So let's start off with this orange. I don't need to start off with yellow. That's going back too light in value. Alright, now adding this in here right now, I can tell that some of that ink is not quite dry, but I think it'll be okay. Not dry in the islands, that black ink. It'll be okay though, I think. Yeah, that one's a little bit black there. So I kind of spread that out a little bit. Maybe I'll make that a horizon line, maybe out there. Okay, and we'll see those ones were the last ones that I stamped. Okay, let's go like that. Make it a bit of a horizon line. And I'll develop that in a bit. Alright, so this is the orange. And I'm just kind of at the base of it. I mean, I have this kind of on its side like this, giving myself a thin stroke. Okay. That is that. Let's do something. Let's use a little bit of this ochre here. Okay. Let's kind of blend it in like so, and okay. Kind of anchoring down these islands a little bit with some additional tone. Alright, let's try, how about the rich cocoa? Could use the walnut, whatever. You know, the biggest thing is I'm just kind of working through one layer after another. And, I mean, the jump from one color to the next isn't vast. So, I'm getting really easy blends, okay? It's not like going with this dark brown right on top of white paper or something of that sort. And that's where the ease of it comes into play. If you just kind of work incrementally, you know, and don't rush it. And plus, the more colors and ink that you use, potentially, the more kind of rich in kind of a color saturations your scene can get or will get. Okay. Coming around. Let's move over to that thinner viscosity Marvy brown, okay? Or just any Marvy inks. See how I kind of turn my paper in a direction that's very conducive for getting into that area. You don't always have to work like this. If I work like this and I'm going like this, I can't really see what's happening, but when I do it this way, I can see, you know, exactly where I'm getting, and I kind of have my tip here, my stylus tool tip at an angle. So I get right in there, right on the edge of that island, and really build up that shadow where the island meets the surface of the water. Okay. Kind of really anchoring those islands into the water, isn't it, with shadow? Or with the use of shadow. Is that? They're really sitting in the water now. And it says that the islands are opaque, you know, you don't have like light coming through them, you know, not really casting a shadow, so it gives kind of visual weight to your scene. Okay, here's black. I'm using just the same black that I stamped the islands in. Okay. Usually I kind of use the darkest color that I used in the imagery or somewhere in the scene in my shadows, and also to kind of give a nice vignette to the overall composition. So in other words, kind of darker on the perimeter, or just the four corners even, to kind of contain your composition. Don't use black though. Well, you could, but I generally don't use black in my vignette corners if I don't use black, you know, in the scene. Like, for example, here I could have stamped those islands in a darker brown or something like that, or in various shades of brown, instead of just all in black. In that case, maybe I would use that dark brown, you know, on the perimeter, or in the four corners. Okay. Going a little bit more, a little bit darker right around the edges here. for my shadows. It's kind of doing that containment, as I mentioned. Okay, how does that look in terms of a nice glow? Kind of a nice sunset glow, huh? All right. Okay. Let's see. Let's treat this little grassy area down here with a little bit of hue, I think. I was thinking about the pear tart might be nice, or I really like peeled paint, distressing green. Let's get a little bit of color down there. Okay, I'm just going to lightly, you know, kind of add it in. When you do it in a nice gradual fashion, you'll have, like I said, you'll have a lot of control over it. Just kind of tweaking the color scheme a little bit, everything in there is reds and, you know, orange, brown, yellows. This adds a tinge of green. Maybe it's almost too subtle. Let's try the pear tart in addition to that peeled paint. Okay. Looks pretty good. Okay, something like that. It's got a little tinge of green there. Kind of creates a different, little bit of a different twist on your color scheme, I guess. All right, so let's have some fun with subject matter. Take that. Here's my lady writer. There's a smaller version of it too, but I'll go with the bigger version here. Kind of adds a kind of more drama, potentially, the larger the figure. It's like this figure is going out for a morning ride. Maybe before beginning work or something like that. Or actually, this is a sunset after work's done. I did this other scene last week when it looked a little bit more like dawn, maybe. I see this as more sunset, you know, with those intense, kind of glowing, you know, golden colors. All right, keeping this down for a little bit longer again, you know, because of all those tones that I've just laid down on the perimeter here at the left side and the right side, but I'm stamping this on the left. Okay, there she is. That island is, you know, not in the way of the silhouette of that horse right there. See, if that island is right behind here, you wouldn't be able to see the nice silhouette of the shape. So, all right, so that is that, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to stamp this leaves stamp, but I'm going to do it in my Versafine right here. And the Versafine is a really dark black pigment ink, so it kind of sits on the surface of the paper rather than dye-based inks that absorb into the paper. So this will give me a nice, deep, kind of dimensional, hopefully dimensional looking impression here. I'm going to stamp it right over the horse because the horse is farther back from us, so this is just like looking into the scene from, I don't know, a little ways away. Something like that. It's nice and stark black. And let's balance it off a little bit. Ink up again. And why don't I hit it from kind of this angle right here, maybe? Kind of like that. Kind of put you, I don't know, in a situation where you're kind of looking into the scene. Maybe hidden. I don't know if you're spying on her or something like that, but just as a viewer and kind of enjoying the view along with the figure. Alright, so that is the stamping portion of it. I'll add in some additional touches here with some different media. Alright, now I've retained some of the white of the paper. I tell you what, I'm going to let this dry a touch before I come in here. I'm worried about that pigment ink. I don't want to touch it or something like that and for it to smear, so let's let this sit for a few minutes. And then we'll come back in and add some different effects with it. Okay, I've given this a few minutes to dry, or to set up, at least. Let's see if we can add in a few little highlights in here. Alright, it goes from dark to light from the outside to in. Now I'm working from light to dark from the inside out with this gel pen. Okay, and let's see if we can add some interesting effects. This is just your regular gel pen. It's a white gel pen. This one's a Uniball Signo pen, which I've had pretty good luck with in terms of it not clogging. It's always the question, because everyone's always had those gel pen kind of stories, including myself, where we buy these pens and they work once or something like that, or some of them in the old days when they first started coming out didn't work at all. Just brand new, and that was always kind of discouraging. But Uniball Signos are pretty good. The Shuttle Art multi-pack that I bought is very good as well. They're a little bit more translucent though, so they're not quite as opaque. Right now I'm going for a nice stark white dot here to represent those kind of specular lights, the light that's brighter than white, so it's kind of a reflective little sparkle on the water's surface. You can see them in here. As you move away from the light, kind of spread your dots apart a little bit more, so that it transitions from light to dark, okay? And see, this is why I've also retained some of that light, the white of the paper, so I can kind of add these little effects in here. Alright, so there's a little bit of I don't know, some shimmer, I guess you can say, on the water surface. This is one thing that I don't have in all the shows. Here's a gold pen. And this one is also a Uniball. But, like I said, the Shuttle Art ones, or just those multi-pack ones that are really inexpensive, seem to be working pretty good these days. I think they've resolved a lot of the issues, you know, that were part of the problem with the old pens, whatever they were. Maybe the gel was too thick or something like that. Okay, this is gold, and I'm adding it to an area that's roughly the same value as gold in terms of light and dark, so I can't really see it too well. But the thing that's nice about this gold is that when you hold up the scene to the light, you know, the right angle, that gold will be nice and reflective. And it's one of those little, I don't know, subtle things. It's not too subtle when you hold it up to the light, but when you just look at it just straight, you really can't see it, but see that right there? You can see all the dots and things like that a little bit more, but you can see these certain dots kind of coming alive. Right in here. See all that? Right down here. Invisible? Visible. So it's just, I don't know, it's one of those fun little things, like one of those little optical things. You can see those ones right there. You can't see it at all, and now you can see it. So, I don't know. I think it adds a little bit more shimmer to the scene. And I do like those, I don't know, little details from effects such as that. Okay, now let's try some of the... If I could find it. Okay, here it is. Alright, that's gold. I thought that was green or something like that. It's the Wink of Stella brush pen. It's been out for years, but I just found out about it like 2 weeks ago. I can't focus in on this. There we go. Wink of Stella. Shake it up. I don't know if you have to squeeze this every time or what. This is the little thing that says push right here on the pen. Let me see if I can, yeah, you can see that? Push, push, so you kind of squeeze that and it comes out. But, anyways, they call it a, you know, the company that makes these calls it a glitter pen, but I like it because it's not so glittery, it's kind of more iridescent to me, like a mica more than like a glitter, which I really like for that subtle aspect of it too. Okay, I'm just kind of adding that down in that area. Let me see if I can see it here. Okay, I think I got a glimpse of it briefly, but yeah, can you see that part in there come alive? All right. I've added it in white, so it's kind of clear on white, so it's not real apparent, but you can kind of see it there. And I've added it down here and here too. Let me see, let me go out here a little bit more. And kind of work from the inside out here, from the light into the, I don't know, I wouldn't say dark, but darker. Alright, here we go. Yeah, you can kind of... I didn't slather it over everywhere, I kind of gave it a thin layer, so... Anyway, so we get that kind of shimmer going in here now. See that? It's a little bit more reflective, I think. Kind of within the theme of this composition right here. Alright, I think I'm going to leave it as is. Sometimes I put a little highlights on these. Well, I wasn't going to do that, but maybe I will add a couple. I think I want to leave it fairly subtle, okay? in terms of my use of this pen, but I did go pretty crazy with the gel pen up here, showing a lot of texture in terms of those little white dots. But maybe we can add a few onto this branch. I won't go crazy with it because I don't want to, be overkill here, but see, I feel these little dots right there. See that? It'll give me, or these branches, kind of a little bit of common texture with that shimmery surface of the water. Okay, I'm not trying to make these branches shimmer or something like that, but they're just kind of capturing the light a little bit. You can really see it like that, really kind of stand out, but this would be about, what we'd be looking at this scene with, from arm's distance. And it just kind of adds that extra little touch and gives it kind of a commonality with what's going on in the distance there. Alright, so that is that. It's a pretty easy scene, there's not a lot of complex things. There's not a ton of overlap either here, in terms of blending things in together. The key to this one, though, is, are those shadows that, you kind of create at the base of these islands to really set them into that water. And, I'll work through several colors, but it takes me to get up to that black that I stamped them out in, I think, for them to really sit in the paper and for it to really have a cohesive type of appearance to the overall. So it's just a really fun scene. And if you're in some area around the nation or the world, it's very cold right now, this one goes out to you. And just a nice warm kind of sunset scene on the islands. Anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Drop us a note if you have any comments about it or questions.